news that's short, sharp and shrewd.
Are you talking about the podcast or me?
Both.
Backhanded compliment.
This is Up Late with Ben Harvey. Okay, let's get it over with. It's all so grim.
I know we should be talking about important things like what's happening in Ukraine, or the floods on the East Coast, which are disrupting the distribution of critical medicines, or making West Australian 8-year-olds mask up in class so they don't get COVID. But there's a thing on at Joondalup Magistrates Court this week that is just too good to ignore. You know the new bikie insignia laws, where you can't display your gang patch or tattoos or anything like that. The cops have charged a rebel bikie who has the surname Kickit, and his first names are Jet Li. How good is that name? And now he's a member of a gang that sports the motto, respect few, fear none. The surname of Kickit is perfect for this guy, because if there's one thing that Jet Li does well... Jet's up in Joondalup Magistrates Court on Friday over what's called a prohibited insignia offence. He was allegedly busted showing his tats or wearing a patch or a gang ring or some such.
Yeah, well, he knew the rules. Tough.
Look, I say never give a bikie a break, but I have a bit of sympathy for Jet.
I'm nobody's bitch.
If he had got his tattoos after these new laws came in, then I'd say fair cop, you're an idiot. But he didn't. When he got that tat, assuming he's been done for that tat, it was completely legal to show it. One of WA's oldest bikies is a Gypsy Joker called Boof. I don't know his real name. He could be one of these guys. Or that could be a ZZ Top tribute band. Boof's been a joker for 50 years, one of the original 1%ers back when bikies were a very different breed. And now a half a century after he got his tattoo, we're telling a guy old enough to get the pension that he's breaking the law by showing it.
The thug that's been terrorizing the city, say hello, Marvin.
Hello.
And I know they can cover them up, but we've just gone through the hottest summer on record.
Everybody know everybody.
And people like Jet clearly pound some iron so you can forgive a young man for putting on the gun show for the girls.
There must have been a heap of bikies charged over this.
Here's the weird thing, there's actually not. There are 700 odd patch bikies in WA, all of them have tats, and most of them can't help themselves from showing them, but only 10 have been charged. Jet's mate and fellow rebel Josh, now Josh, don't get angry if I mispronounce your surname, I think it's Wakim, had his first appearance in court on January 31. There's a Comanchero called Nathan Greenway. He was up in Freo Court 2 weeks ago. There are the boys partying at Rendezvous Hotel in Scabs. Jamie Ginn's been charged, so has Jesse Coatman and Jason Pettigrove. Hell's Angel Tyson Robertson has had his first appearance. He was among a group of bikies kicked out of the Lookout a couple of years ago. The Lookout being one of the few pubs in Australia where having Hell's Angels inside actually dilutes the boganness. And then we have Jason Ross Sullivan, Nathan John Yusuf and Alan Keith Wright, who I have never heard of before.
Well, what about WA's most famous tats?
Dane Brakovic.
Yeah.
Maybe keeping a low profile. Maybe house hunting. Maybe trying to work out the best makeup to use to cover up his ink. He hasn't been charged yet, but he probably will be. The point is, the cops are using these powers, which by any measure are pretty draconian, sparingly. If you play up, like the Muppets at the Rendezvous and the Lookout did, or you use your patches to intimidate people while using unchristian language like this, then you're going to get charged. But if you just get on with life like old mate Boof at the Gypsy Jokers, then they'll probably leave you alone.
Now, I know you didn't want to talk about the Ukraine, but did you see Zelensky's latest move?
The prisoners? He pardons a bunch of convicts who have combat experience so they can go fight the enemy. It's the plot from The Dirty Dozen.
The last guy in the world you'd expect to be a hero.
I know.
Such a good movie. A bunch of angry paramilitary types who spent the past few years inside a Ukrainian jail, which, let's face it, isn't going to put you in the best of moods, are going to be let loose on the Russians. The cream puffs at Acacia Prison did this during their few hours of rioting on Sunday. Imagine what proper criminals with military training can do in Kyiv.
I'll tell you what, McGowan seems pretty cranky. Maybe they should send him to Ukraine.
McGowan looks like he's about to tell a journo to go themselves to death.
That's not what I said. I repeat what I said. Well, that's exactly contrary to the question from over here.
The Premier was under pressure yesterday to justify his recently announced COVID restrictions. He was appearing at a press conference about a new Metronet train station near Mandurah.
And here we are today at Lakeland Station. This is an important part of Metronet.
Which precisely zero people care about, because we know that by the time Metronet's working, trains will be obsolete because we'll all have personal jetpacks. And is so often the case when McGowan's under pressure over the COVID response, he went scaremongering.
We're all gonna die.
Hammering the point that lives are at stake.
Do we ignore the health advice and therefore have large numbers of people hospitalised and potentially die, or do we follow the health advice?
We were told that hospitalisations, not case numbers, would bring in the harsher restrictions.
And we only have 16 people with COVID in hospital.
Yeah.
And none of them are really serious.
Which is a fantastic outcome.
This is what the Premier said a bit over a week ago.
I'm pretty keen to avoid level 2 restrictions if we possibly can.
Now he says we're experiencing the calm before the storm.
But the advice is, from our health professionals, you've seen the published advice, that the numbers will grow rapidly in hospital.
Way to jinx us, Mark. The lightning rod issue is whether we should be forcing kids to wear masks at school.
Children in particular can be significant spreaders of the virus. And so by having mask wearing, you can reduce the spread of the virus, but also because they are in a room for an extended period of time with each other, by having mask wearing, you actually ensure that fewer of them, in fact probably none of them, are now close contacts.
On this matter, the smartest minds in the world are hopelessly divided. In one corner we have Dr. Nick.
Hi, Dr. Nick!
Dr. Nick Coatsworth, rather. The face of the COVID-19 ad campaign says masks for Year 3s are not necessary. Australian Medical Association WA President Mark Duncan-Smith says we shouldn't listen to him at all. The World Health Organisation is against masks in schools, but that's from a learning perspective, not on medical grounds. Telethon Kids Institute Director and Paediatric Diseases Specialist Jonathan Karapetis says primary school age children should wear masks because they reduce transmission in schools by 20%. But authorities in America, a country whose experience Karapetis says proves masks work, are now considering taking them off.
So
who the knows?
The stakes have never been higher.
I'm Ben Harvey. If you'd like to watch Up Late with me, Ben Harvey, search for The West Australian on YouTube.